Welcome to So What's It Actuary About? I'm your host, Margie Mackechnie, and I, along with my wide array of guests, hope to help you better understand and weather the wonderful world of actuarial science. Hello and welcome to the first episode of So What's It Actuary About? I am Margie Mackechnie and I am your host, and today I am joined by Andrew Mackechnie, who you've probably guessed is my brother, and he is an actuarial science student. I am a qualified actuary, and we'll be just discussing what the podcast is about and just positioning for you. So, Andrew, I did ask you to send me a bio, but you didn't.
Because I'm your brother. Sure, no.
Yes, expected. But give us a little bit of a background as to who you are and how did you get to the space that you are in now?
So, as everyone heard, I'm Andrew Mackechnie. I'm Margie's little brother.
Little being 6'3", and I'm 5'3", so maybe I'm the small one.
The average is normal. The way I sort of got to where I am in the actuarial space and studying is through you, honestly. I think having 4 older siblings and seeing all the separate avenues they went down to study what they studied, what they found interesting. We were given quite a few forums in grade 11 and grade 9 to job shadow, and I remember you being a real hero and organizing a whole week for me.
Doesn't sound like me at all.
Yeah, so in grade 11, and you just organized for me to go from meeting to meeting to sort of have an interview with every facet of an actuarial team, especially in the product development space, which I absolutely loved. It was really nice to see people who weren't just number crunchers, but people who could actually face-to-face interactions and really help people on a tangible level. That's kind of why I went into actuarial. Mm-hmm. Everybody will agree with me. You have no idea what you want.
No, exactly. And I mean, that's part of the reason why I'm doing this podcast. And I think another question I would have to you is, what drew you to actuarial science? Like, yes, you exposed to it because of me, but what was it like? Yes, this is what I want to do. Like, this is what I want to spend some good years giving my life to.
Yeah, I mean, it's those 3 assumptions that people make of you when they say actuarial science. Is like, oh, wow, you like money, you're good at maths, and you don't really like personal interactions.
Yeah, exactly. 3
assumptions.
The stereotypes, yeah.
Those are the stereotypes of an actuary. And, like, yes, I'm sure money would be nice, but if you're doing it for money, then it's not going to be fulfilling in the slightest. So
agreed.
Seeing you on the product development side of things and seeing that you can actually help people with the numbers made it a lot more personal, and it made it something which I thought, okay, I can take my mathematical skills, I can take problem solving skills and make it applicable and helpful to the average person, the people on the ground.
Yeah.
And that's what made it very attractive. I think I had civil engineering on the table. At one stage I was thinking of mechatronics, but actuarial science had just sort of settled, and I suppose I could also see your character development through it.
That's true. Well, I don't know if it was good character, but some form of character for each of me. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. But I think it's interesting that you say that you protect people. I think one thing that I always try to inform my students about, so for a bit of context, I'm a lecturer and I lecture actuarial science at the moment, is that you are protecting people with numbers. You're using the uncommon skill of being highly numerate to actually protect people who don't understand their risk and want to be protected and trust various insurance companies and institutions to protect them from things that they can't protect themselves from. And that for me is very motivating. And I think, when people think about actuaries, they don't think about that. They don't think about the protection and the exactly, and like the risk management and these people who work behind the scenes to understand what's playing out in order to protect you from it.
Completely.
And that's I think my heart very much in doing this podcast is getting various people who are interested in actuarial science, people who are studying actuarial science, and people who are even actuaries to say, what is it that we do as actuaries, and what are the different spaces we can work in? What are the different things we do? And how is it that we shape society, even though we're quite a small group of people? What is the impact that we make?
Completely. I mean, why did you do actuarial science?
Sure. So I think if I look back, I have always been passionate about education. And so when I when I thought about what I wanted to do when I grew up, the whole way through high school, I was like, I want to be a teacher. And yet I got very good matric results and I was discouraged from becoming a teacher, which I think was a difficult space for me because I was almost felt I was too clever for the things I wanted to do, which is
I should have done that.
exactly. And that was strange because I was like, am I too clever for the things I want? And so I was encouraged to do something that was more stimulating for me. And actuarial science was like the hardest degree. So I was like, okay, well, let's go do this
challenge.
You know, I was like, and that's the sort of person I am. I'm like, okay, fine. If I can't do the thing I want, then I'm going to do the most difficult thing. And I knew I was fighting. Yeah, exactly. Myself. Strange sort of pathway there. But I did it, and it was something that was incredibly challenging. I don't think anything has challenged me as much as actuarial science. And I think also I didn't understand what I was doing. I mean, I think I only really understood what I was doing in honours, which is sort of at 22. And I made the decision to study actuarial science at 18. So there was this sort of interim period where I was like, I'm crunching numbers, I'm, using distributions, I'm highly numerate, but what on earth is it that I'm actually doing? Like, I'm learning all these skills and I'm making friends and we're going through the trenches, but like, what is it that we're actually fighting for, And that's why it's so important for me that we discuss these things, because I think sometimes students fall off the bandwagon because they're like, it's so hard and I don't even know what I'm fighting for, and I'm sacrificing so much because I have to work so hard and I'm failing and I'm redoing courses and there's like a million board exams and like, what is it that's actually happening? And that's why I want to do this podcast, because I have these conversations daily with students and I'm saying, okay, well, like, let's actually have this conversation more corporately so that people can tap in, listen and be like, oh, I'm not alone. Yes. And I think one thing that often happens with actuarial science is you do feel alone, because you spend so much time by yourself with your distributions and your mortality tables, and you're like, I'm alone, and me, I'm just chilling out with the dead people on the mortality tables, and I'm
lots of people are smiling.
exactly. And like I want to know that there's other people that understand this, and also what they did with these skills that I am developing and why these skills are worth developing.
Yes.
And I think that that's really important. So I became an actuary, I think, for the challenge. But then once I had got to my 4th year, I engaged with actuarial risk management, I engaged with healthcare, I engaged with financial products. Yes. And I was like, okay, I understand. Like, we actually are creating a space where we protect people. Yes. And because we can predict risk and how it plays out, or try to, we can actually help society and protect society. And I was like, I could do that.
So wait, that meant you specialized in what?
So I specialized, in order to, and these are all things we'll unpack throughout the podcast, but I specialized in healthcare. So I'm a healthcare actuary, health insurance actuary, with a sub-major in life insurance. So that's the space I am sort of knowledgeable in. And I'm building up my experience in other spaces, because as an academic actuary now, because I'm teaching these things, I'm forced to. And also, I think it makes me a better lecturer if I have better exposure.
Well-rounded,
Exactly. So in 4th year, I decided, okay, I could actually do this, but I really now put in almost 4 years worth of work. Yeah. And then when I got to the workplace, exactly, I was like, I had to qualify as an actuary now because I put so much effort in. And then, once I started working, I worked in consultancy, I worked in corporate, and then I got to product design in healthcare, specifically for low-income people. And I was like, this is the most worthwhile work I have ever done in my whole life. Like, it was unbelievable. Like, I remember the one time my boss called me in and he was like, why do you care so much? And I was just like, but like, we're helping these people. Like, it was just like, I would exactly. I was like, I've been doing this for so long, and for the first time, I'm like, this is my skill set, something I'm passionate about, and these things I'm using together, and it made for unbelievable work because I had my heart and my head in the work, and I think that's what I want to discuss more with various people, to say, how do you leverage both of those? Because actuaries are seen as head people, but there's also a heart behind it, and that's what I want to unpack. So I think my question to you is, how would you define an actuary?
When I think of an actuary, I think of a ship going down with many leaks sprouting. I think of an actuary being someone who knows exactly where those leaks are going to come from. Yeah. Knows exactly how big the thumb needs to be to stick into that hole. Yeah. And keep the ship afloat. Sure.
It's a very interesting way of thinking about it. So I think for me, I have maybe a more structured view of it, because I've been at these, university open days where people come to me and they're like, so what is it that actuaries do? Yes. And I always say to them, it's actually not that difficult to understand. Yeah. We do three things. We price, yes. We reserve, or we evaluate.
Yes.
That's basically what we do.
Yeah.
And then they're like, okay, that's all good and well, but I only understood one of those words. And I'm like, okay, well, if you think about any insurance product, any premium that you pay, think about funeral cover, most common insurance in South Africa. That premium that you're paying is calculated by an actuary. Any insurance that you are buying, the premium is calculated by an actuary. Yeah. That's pricing. Reserving, another word for reserve is to save. Yeah. Right? And basically it's saying, okay, now that we've priced, we need to put money aside so that if those things that we've promised, so they say for funeral cover, right? Worst case scenario. So let's say someone in your family dies. Well, the insurance company has to have this pool of funds, right? Savings that they need to be able to pay their obligation to the person who has now paid them a premium. Exactly. And so that's the reserving side of it, saying, well, what do we have to put aside to make sure that we are actually fulfilling that obligation? And then the evaluation side is saying, okay, let's monitor what's going on. Like, are we putting enough money aside? Are we pricing correctly? Exactly. Or as experience kind of unraveled and things are completely different to what we thought they would be. One of the big actuarial questions is always actual versus expected. We expected this to happen, but actually this happened. So why didn't that occur? And what are the drivers? So those are the three things that actuaries do. And then from there you can go into disciplines, etc. But fundamentally those are the things they do. Yes. And I think when you understand that, you actually see actuaries everywhere, because insurance is everywhere. And they work in the banking space, they work in wider fields, there's research. I mean, in COVID, actuaries played a massive role because they were doing the modeling. That was their black swan event. Exactly. What's the 1 in 200 year event? So it's interesting because actuaries seem like backroom, but actually they're very much front room, in the sense that they're helping inform the risk of society, and risk is everywhere. We all have things that we're scared of happening, and there's an element of insurance that can be taken off of that. So that was how I explain it. But I like the ship analogy. I should maybe use that in class. But just for our audience, where are you in your actuarial journey?
So I am in my third year of study. Mm-hmm. Stats 2 got me.
Well, no, fourth year of study. Third year
of study in my third year.
Stats takes all of us.
Third year of study. I'm currently doing actuarial economics. Finished off with stock proc, stochastic processes, lifecon.
All these affectionate names for these lovely subjects.
But yeah, risk theory. So basically just carrying on with my third year, going to second semester as we stand, and hopefully doing honors next year.
And tell me, from this podcast, I mean, I've spoken briefly about that I wanted to inform students, and I've talked about, people who are actuaries, studying actuarial science, or even interested in it. I think the format that I want to take for the podcast is hopefully having bi-weekly podcasts. So producing one on a Monday, one on a Friday. The Monday one focusing on becoming an actuary. So beginning of the week, time zero, we're becoming.
At time zero.
At time zero. And saying, what does it take to become an actuary? Like, what are the things that you need to know? What are the board exams you write? Those sort of things. And then on Friday, actually interviewing actuaries and saying, okay, what's it like being an actuary? Like, what do you do? Kind of thing, time in. And to compare those two things. I mean, obviously it means getting guests, etc. So these things might be, one a week as opposed to 2 a week, but that's currently the plan. And I think it's important to see both, because, you're at the beginning of the journey. And sometimes I remember sitting with my manager when I was in corporate and saying to her, it's so difficult understanding what an actuary is until you're there.
Yeah.
And then I remember her sharing her story with me, and she said, I almost failed stats too. And I was like, no way. You're one of the best actuaries. I was like, you're one of the best actuaries I've ever seen. How did you almost fail stats too? And that's what I want from this podcast is I think
people being human.
Yeah, people being human, but also saying, just because you've had a bump in the road doesn't mean that you can't become an actuary and you can't be effective. And also becoming an actuary isn't the most important thing in the world. And yet it's an interesting space, it's an interesting field, and it's an incredible thing to aspire to. But to give a more holistic view of what actuarial science is. So given that that's what the podcast is about, what are questions that you would like, or topics you would like discussed or answered